Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel, Watercolor Impressions. We have been doing quite a lot of paintings, so let's get away from it and do some lighthouse this week. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. As always, I'll provide the drawing template and reference. Check my video description to download it so you guys can follow with me. As far as drawing concerned, I'll start with the bigger shapes in my reference. The first shape would be the sky and the next one would be the lighthouse. So since we can't block the sky because it's going to be as it is, just blocking the horizontal line. And I also lowered the horizontal line in such a way that it will give a good composition for us. Being said that, I did do a mistake of cutting our composition and painting in half. And that's a good rule of thumb. No, don't ever do your composition in half, and that doesn't look really good. It have to be 1/3 or 1/4, it other way around. So as they say, mistakes are the best teachers. So I left it as it is. In the next painting I do, I'll keep that in mind. And I'm quickly blocking the things which are in the foreground. As a painter paradise, I'm going to treat as the abstract shapes. So I finished my drawing. I'll start with my first wash. The first wash should be the sky. First, I want to block in the darker clouds, but as soon as I put my sky, it kind of went over it, and that's a beautiful thing about watercolors. It will just bleed and do things what it wants, and so I just butchered my clouds. So I left it as it is. So I'm just showing this mistake because these are the things, which helps us to grow as an artist. So next time when I do the sky, I want to make sure that I won't put the dark clouds first, and I'll start with the sky, and I'll just use my tissue paper to get rid of paint so that I know where the cloud goes. Even though in the reference the clouds are in different areas, but I'll place it in such a way that it frames our lighthouse. So when it comes to the rocks, and I'm using a lot of warmer tones, and I'm using a lot of raw umber and a lot of yellow ochre in it. In the foreground, so if you see in the reference, the foreground is a really complex thing to paint. If I would have done this painting maybe a year ago, I would have not approached this subject because it's really complex. Being said that, whenever you paint, think everything as shapes and how it's created, and how it can be created with your brushstroke in few simpler steps. That way you can create beautiful paintings just by doing that. So you could see I also blocked in some of the bushes there, but I'm working on my first wash, so I'm putting my light layers first. And now I'm blocking the house. For the house, I'm using a little bit of cadmium yellow and a little bit of yellow ochre in it to get the warmth in it. And you can see when I'm painting these houses, I'm trying to paint in such a way that it's quick and confident. And this is a thing. I'm also working as an artist, working on a brush strokes. A lot of people can say how confident you can do your painting just by seeing your brush strokes and the edges and everything else. I chose this subject because I want to talk about inspiration a little bit before we jump on to painting on everything else. So even though I never went to this place, my sister went here and she shared a picture of it with me. So my sister is the one who inspired me in paint because she's an acrylic painter. And she paints in a really vibrant medium, and she created beautiful paintings. So that inspired me to paint. So I started painting. So once I started painting, I gained a little bit of following, and she stopped painting because I got really good at it. So that's the thing, there is something you have to get inspired from. It's from people, or it's from photos, it's from a place. It doesn't matter. So that keeps you going, even though if you want to do a painting of this, you don't have to do it. You can find a picture, you can learn the techniques from this painting, and you can apply on your painting of your inspiration. So let's focus on the painting there. So when it comes to rocks are a really painful thing to paint. And you have to go and put each and every details with showing the mid-tones and the darker tones. But I'll keep it simplified, and I'll keep it really simple as possible. And I'm a big fan of keeping it really simple, even though I can go and paint each and individual rock in my painting, and that will look really horrible because might as well take my time and do it. but I don't have patience to do it. I do paint my paintings really fast, and that also helps you to see better and look for shapes really faster. And you can see I have a lot of darker tones at the bottom of those rocks. So the reason being is when I put my water down there, this will bleed into my water and it will give a reflection and it paints by itself. And that's why I left it as it is. And you can see I started with darker water at the top at the horizon, and as I said, I also lowered the horizon line so it gives a really good composition. And you can see as soon as I put my water at the bottom of my rocks, and it bleeds by itself and creates this magical things which we can create using brush strokes. So now I jumped onto the clouds because I want the water to be wet and dry, so we can put another wash on the rocks. So I'm trying to add this shadows for the clouds, and I'm trying to keep it like really simplistic as possible, because I don't want to paint a lot of details on the clouds, because our painting is about the lighthouse and the contrast in the lighthouse. Now let's focus on the lighthouse. So I'm just gonna wet the paper in the middle of the lighthouse, and I'm just gonna put the shadow on left hand side of it. Since I wet the paper, and that will give a blurry edges, and it also gives the form of a cylinder for our lighthouse. And you can see as soon as we put the shadow, the lighthouse came alive, and I'm also connecting that shadows with my houses, which is facing on the shadow side. And I'm using a little bit of purple in there, and I'll just keep building it up. And you can also see as soon as we add the shadow on the left hand side and everything framed, the light and shadow started appearing. And that's a beautiful thing about painting, is once you paint light and shadows, everything will take place magically by itself. And I'm also adding a little bit of the shadow side. Since it's wet, I'm also adding it on the wet on wet, and it gives a little bit of the blurriness, and it's in the shadow with atmosphere in it. So I'm also adding some details for the chimneys at the top. So I dried for a bit, so now let's focus on the bushes. I was a little bit worried, I was a little bit scared to paint these bushes, but I'll treat this as shapes instead of as each individual shapes. And I put my mid-tone. Before it dries out, I'll add a little bit of a darker tone, and I'm using French Ultramarine blue for it, and that enhances sunlight for us. And there's also another shadow which is going at the top of the rocks, and I'm also adding that. I'm also combining with my bushes as well. And I'm going to connect all the shadows together, so that also gives a little bit of expressive strokes in our painting. And I'm working on the shadows for the rocks, which is in the foreground, and this have to be done really fast and really quick as possible. Because if you take your time and if you try to paint each and individual rocks and the cliffs and everything, it will take you forever, and you will come up with a stiff painting, and you lose the freshness of the watercolors. And I already have a mid-tone set up for the rocks, so now as soon as I add a little bit of shadow on it, and it will take care of the 3D shapes by itself. And at the bottom I'll make that, I'll make some loose edges, so it kind of looks like there is something is happening at the bottom of the rocks. So once we added the mid-tone, now I'm going to add a little bit of details on the cliffs on the right hand side and the left hand side. And when I squinted my eyes, I saw that there's a lot of cooler shadows within that darker shape. So for that I'm using Cobalt Blue and a little bit of white paint in it. I'm using Chinese white for it to get a little bit of whiteness in it. And I'm adding the shadows for the bushes at the top of the cliff, and I'll just combine it by having a little bit of makeup shadows as per se. So I think I'm happy with this, and now it's once we painted everything, I lost a lot of highlights by itself, so I'm using white paint to bring some of the details back. So when you do it, make sure you do it to minimal, because this is an easy thing to do, and it's also really fun to do as well, and sometimes I get carried by myself. So I'm also using Chinese white for it from the tube, and you can see I'm also breaking the clouds a little bit better in a way that, you know, there is a little bit of segregation in our clouds. We are at the end of our painting. I'm just gonna add some of the highlights at the clouds, and that's it, folks. And it looks really good. And I also have this tape on because it shows like how your painting will look like once it's framed. And now it's your turn. Take my drawing template and reference, and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this how to paint a lighthouse video tutorial with me. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section. If you want me to cover any of the subjects on watercolors, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or comment below. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And please do share with your friends and family. And good luck with your painting, folks.